Father in heaven, I pray for grace to be able to share something that would be pleasing to you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Dear friends, tonight, questions and considerations in regard to moving to the country, part 3. Before we talk about the more practical aspects of water, driveways, land access, electricity, choosing the land, I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about the mindset. Mindset is you want to hit the ground running. You want to be proactive. You want to be energetic. You want to be diligent. You want to be persistent. I'll give you a few examples of these things in my own history, some things that really encouraged me and helped me. Before, though, I share, I'd like to quote a Bible verse. It's Proverbs 20, verse 4. And what it says is, "The sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold." I mean, it's cold outside, so I'm not going to go out and push the plow. Here's the problem. Then Solomon writes that when winter comes, followed by harvest, if you don't plow, then when it comes harvest time, you don't eat, you have nothing. So you beg for bread because you wouldn't get out and plow by reason of the cold. So we got to hit the ground running. We've got to have a diligence and a persistence that pays off. Now, I'm not leaving God out of the picture. In fact, without God, we can't have diligence and persistence. Those are qualities that come from the Lord. But it's an important aspect of moving into the country, of making a radical change. It's the mindset. Now, when Darlene and I were young, see, these pictures are when we had just met. This is 40 years ago. We weren't really happy. I mean, our lives and the drinking and all the secular outlook. But we found some peace when we went camping. And this is a few pictures of us camping. There's Darlene, there I am. But you know what? I found out once I met Darlene and we were going camping that she made the tent in which we're staying. She made the tent. She got needle and thread and made the tent. I couldn't believe it. I thought, you're crazy. You go down to the outdoor supply store. You go down to a North Face store. You go to REI Sporting Goods. You buy a tent. She made the tent. And then, my dear friends, she made me a coat. Now here's a picture of me wearing that coat. And I still have the coat. It's great. It's packed up in the attic. I'd put it on and I'd wear it. But I've got it stored up in the attic. She made me this parka, this cold weather parka. She let me choose the colors, and she got needle and thread and made me that coat. I couldn't believe it. I never thought you could actually make a coat. Not a regular person. But my dear friends, regular people can do a whole lot of spectacular things with God's help. Now I realize when this was transpiring in our lives, we weren't Christians. But my dear friends, in Matthew 5:45, the sun shines on the good and the evil. The Lord wants to help us. If we don't know Him, He still knows us and wants to give us some help. It was later on, when we moved out to the country, that we needed some honey. Darlene and I got on this health kick, sort of. We weren't really healthy, but we were trying to do things that we thought were healthy. And so instead of white table sugar, we were transferring over to honey. But we didn't want to go and buy honey in the store. Darlene got the idea, we're going to have beehives. And then she made the beehives. Couldn't believe it. Got a table saw and actually made the beehives. Got a bee suit, and then we were starting to make honey. And this is what the honey looks like. If you've never, this is honey in the comb still. Because when you have hives, when the bees make the honey, it comes out in like wax frames. And the way you do it, if you have equipment and money, you can get a capping knife. It's like a hot knife. It breaks off the tops of a comb. You put it in an extruder. It spins it. Centrifugal force removes the honey from the comb. And then it runs down. You fill your jar up. We didn't have all that equipment. Darlene built the hive. That's all we had. So we would cut the comb up, put it in jars, and we'd eat the honey out of the comb. It's really good that way. And but I couldn't believe, Darlene made the tent, then she made me a coat, and later she made those beehives. I was just amazed. But I started to get this idea that the mindset that we can do it. Back then I wouldn't have said by God's grace because I didn't know God. But you know, He knew us, and He was helping us to get a mindset of self-sufficiency and proactivity. So my first effort at doing really anything, Darlene and I were married. We bought a house in Atlanta, and I was going to try to build a deck on the back. Now, I never picked up a hammer. And I knew this man lived across the street. He was a carpenter. So I asked him a question. I said, you know, can you help me? Give me a tip or two on how to build this deck. I'm trying to put a piece of glass in and put a door in and have a deck out the back. He told me, he said, listen, my knowledge, my skills, this is my value is based on what I know. He said, I'm in a union, and in this union, we don't share anything we know with anybody, because this is what our stock in trade. It's the knowledge we have about the work we do. He said, I can't help you, can't tell you anything. I was dumbfounded. I thought, you can't share with me just how to start a deck? He said, can't tell you. And I had to go out and I bought a book. Those were the days before YouTube. Couldn't watch a video, didn't know anybody to go and get some help, to ask questions, to get some help. And so I got a book, and I got my hammer, and I went out and I built this deck, put a piece of glass in, actually put a door in. That was my first building project. I was a city boy 100%. And it worked. We sat down, had the table, the kitchen table by the deck, by the glass, the window. We could have breakfast, can look out into the backyard, see the deck, go out with the door I'd put in. It was great. And I thought, yeah, a lot of these things that I used to think you had to hire a professional or something you can't do yourself, I was seeing that you could. And then later on, once we moved to the country, we were trying to put a well in, and some electrical challenges there. I didn't know anything about electricity. I was trying to put a pump in this deep well so we'd have water. And I got a name of somebody. He came over, and his name was Joe. And I told him, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get power to it. And what he did, he came in, had a pair of these. These are the electrician's pliers. And he took a piece of wire like this. He had two wires. He took the insulation off 2 wires, put them together, put a wire nut on it like that, and then he held out his hand and he said, that'll be $70. And I knew right then that I would never pay another man to do an electrical job for me. And my dear friends, I went out and got myself this book. Not this book, it was a book similar to this. This is the one I use today. I got a book on residential single-phase wiring, and I read that book from cover to cover, and I read it again. And I never paid anybody to do any kind of electrical work for us. And then for the next 40 years, our life there, our home in the country, we went to institutional work. All the buildings in our institution, I wired. We moved over here. I've done the electrical work on everything. And it was all prompted by that man Joe charging me $70 to put 2 wires together. I think what happens is we just don't really believe we can fix things. You think it's an impossibility to change a toilet. My dear friends, that is a simple operation. For a few dollars, you can change the toilet. The little floor flange is so simple, but if you've never done it, you don't know how it works. If your toilet has a problem, if your freezer's not working in your refrigerator, if your clothes aren't getting hot in the dryer, if your washing machine won't pump the water out, it's very, very simple. And this is the mindset you have to develop if you're going to live in the country. If you want to be self-sufficient, if you want to be able to live there at minimal cost. So certainly getting out of debt is a top priority. But part of the whole scenario of getting out of debt is a change in the mindset. And we can do it. By God's grace, we can do it. And then once I became a Christian, I got hold of a concept. I really didn't understand this before. But I was now praying and I was reading the Bible. And some of these verses in Proverbs about you just can't sit idle and expect something to get done. You got to get out and you got to put your hands to work. God helps those who help themselves. I started to get hold of that concept, but I never had to put it into practice until finally the timing belt on my little truck, here's a picture of it. It was a little Mitsubishi pickup truck, blue. It was a new truck. I hadn't had it long. I was driving in the city down below Lookout Mountain, and it just died. I turned the key, and it wouldn't start. And so I got it towed back up to a little cabin we were building, got it towed back up there, and just was absolutely puzzled by what to do. And I started thinking, God helps those who help themselves. I need to pray, and then I need to make an effort. So I prayed. I got my little toolbox, a few tools that I had, and I went up to the truck. I got in, I popped the hood, and as I opened the hood up, our neighbor drove up. His name was Bo. Now, Bo never came to our house. We had like a quarter-mile driveway. I had 2 Great Danes and a Doberman Pinscher. Nobody ever came to our house. Bo was on down the road. He was our closest neighbor. As I lifted that hood, he drove up, got out of his truck, smoking a cigarette. He said, "Be careful, somebody's going around and poisoning dogs." I said, "Really? Thanks for telling me." And then I said, "You know anything about fixing trucks?" He looked at me, he said, "Well, yes, I do." He said, "Get in." I got in, he said, "Turn the key." I turned the key and he heard the engine turning over, but it wasn't engaging. It was just like it didn't have a timing belt, he said. And I said, "Well, a timing belt, how hard is that to fix something like that?" He said, it's not too hard. He said, "Go up to the parts store, buy a timing belt for this truck, give me a call, I'll come over and show you how to do it." And I did. I went, I got a timing belt, called Bo up, he came over and said, "I want to show you what to do." And as I was working on it, he told me, he said, "Remove the timing belt cover and do this and be careful, don't change the timing." I put the timing belt back on, put it all back together, got in the truck, turned the key, and guess what, friends? The thing cranked right up. Bo got in his truck, went home, and I knew God had answered my prayer. Not in the way I expected. He did it in cooperation with my hands. And this I found after 40 years of doing practical things. The mindset we must have is, let God direct your hands, but He's got to have hands to direct. And so that was the timing belt story. And it's one thing after another. Everything from that the beehives Darlene built and seeing her sew the tent, sew my coat, building that deck, Joe in that electrical episode there where I had to pay that man $70, Bo in that timing belt. And I just started thinking, it's the Lord working with us, engaging with us. And even until this day, I got a problem out there with the driveway. Need to get my pick, my shovel, my wheelbarrow, and say, "Lord, going to go up, try to fix the problem. Have mercy and help me." My dear friends, that is the mindset we must develop. And then we're ready to get serious with moving out into the country. God bless you, my friends. You have a nice evening.